So aside from your entrepreneurial reasons for wanting to get into stripping as a way out, there must have been sort of an alert to the performance of it.
I think I saw Striptease with Demi Moore.
Another good one.
I know. Great movie. Great film.
Have you seen the new one? The new J-Lo one?
Oh, Hustlers?
That's a good one.
Oh, I was so emotional during that movie. I cried like several times during that movie.
And why is that?
It's just very relatable to me in my experience. Like I never drugged anybody, but at the same time, like I have seen girls put like Xanax into drinks and stuff like that.
What?
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of, most strippers are like honorable, totally nice women, you know what I mean? Kind of similar backgrounds to me, but there are some women that are just really desperate for money and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. And
so they'll put Xanax to get the guy, because that's the whole basis kind of J-Lo's movie Hustlers, is that they drug the guys to get them to do dances all night, rack up their cards, and then the guys don't want to like press charges after because they kind of embarrassed.
Well, there was an uproar at the club that I worked at because after Hustlers came out, they got rid of credit card tips. So that was I know. So that was like a big chunk of our income. You know what I mean? Because if we got a VIP and the VIP is, $600 for a half an hour, you could ask for like a $300 tip, like a 50% tip. And then guys, if they're in a good mood, if they're feeling good and that sort of thing, they'll do it. You know what I mean? If they have the money and they have the, they're these guys with, disposable incomes of millions of dollars come into the club, you get lucky and you can get actually really generous tips very easily. And so, but without the credit card tips, you don't have that option anymore. So you're just, so
it's just like what they have in cash.
Yeah, exactly. We were just like, we have to go to the ATM. It's like, it was so much more convincing and stuff. And it was because Hustlers came out and because managers saw it and were like, oh, like this is what can happen,
That's too bad because the tips are going directly to you. You don't give them a cut. Like, how does that work? The strip club gets a cut of the money that you make?
I mean, I've worked at clubs where it's like you have to pay out every person on staff $1 a dance. So if you do 20 dances, you have to pay out $20 to every person on staff. The waitresses, the doormen, the bouncers, the DJ and the managers. Wow. So it's like, at the end of the day, those tips really matter because that sometimes your tips are just paying for your payout to everybody.
I was trying to explain our tipping culture to some Australians yesterday, and I was like, look, we don't know. I still have to Google before I get my haircut what I want to need to tip or this or that. So it's insane when you have to tip out other people, when you have to tip out in just a restaurant, a busboy. But in your case, there's a DJ, there's the bouncers, and it's like the DJ, the bouncers, like you've got to grease their palms. I think we've had Julian Fernandez. He's been a guest of the podcast. He used to be a strip club bouncer, and like certain strippers would tip them more or whatever. It must be very difficult to end the night and then you just know who you got to dole out money to.
Well, I mean, if you tip out more, then it's like if some guy comes in and it's like, hey, like, who's a good girl to dance with here? You know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, well, this girl, and they'll recommend the girl that
tips
it's
them like
more.
You take care of them. Yeah. They'll take care
it's
of
like the hostess giving the waitress like the good customers versus like it. This isn't so. What's a typical night like? What time do you show up and what time do you leave there? And
I show up around 10 or 11. Because it's like anytime before that is just like
slow.
Yeah, slow and stuff. And I just want to save my energy for when it's busy.
Which is like midnight? What time?
Like, well, the thing is that most strip clubs don't allow them to serve alcohol, which is a problem, because like guys, that's definitely a part of it. Guys want to booze and they want to, be around naked women. You know what I mean? So a lot of guys, it happens every night of multiple times a night where people will come in and be like, there's no alcohol here. And so a lot of girls...
Because, and now, sorry to interrupt, but is it like, so if I've only been to a strip club in Canada,
really?
And their rules are way more liberal, but you can go, if it's a full nude strip club, you can't serve alcohol. If it's partial nudity, you can serve alcohol. Is that normally how it works?
Pretty much.
And is the idea just because you don't want the men to get like too drunk and...
I guess, but at the same time, now the issue is guys come in at 2 a.m. drunk. And then there's really not much business to speak of.
Yeah, just serve them some some Bud Lights. No one's going to get wasted off of Bud Lights. Give them something to,
Well,
what I'm saying? It's not like it's some hard Jack and Coke or whatever.
What happens is a lot of girls will bring in a flask, and it's a really good way of getting tipped, and it's like, take me to the back and I'll give you a shot, and so guys are like, oh, yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So it's a good way of getting dances. It's a good way of getting tipped. I mean, you're putting yourself at risk and stuff, but at the same time, the club...
At risk how? Like with the law?
Yeah, if it's like a cop cop or something like that, which I mean, every time a cop has ever come into the club, as far as I know, I've always been told by a bouncer, by a manager, by somebody that it's a cop.
Okay.
So I don't really know why they know it's a cop if the cop discloses to them that they're a cop.
Maybe it's with it checking IDs or whatever.
Maybe checking IDs.
Well, Stormy Daniels had this issue in Ohio where she got arrested. Do you remember this? She got arrested for what? Touching a patron who ended up being a cop?
They planned a raid. And so it wasn't just Stormy Daniels. A lot of women got arrested that night. And
they ended up suing them, right? And I think the state had to pay the strippers a lot of money.
Really? I hope so.
Yeah, I'll look into it, but I'm pretty sure Stormy Daniels won because it was like everyone was like, we can clearly see how you're trying to silence somebody who like spoke out against Trump.
Right.
Like, it was a very clear. Yeah. This isn't a coincidence of what happened. You don't remember this?
No, I don't know
because raids like that like never happen.
And I'm sure what happened is someone from up above made a phone call and said, Stormy Daniels is gonna be in town. Just fucking figure it out.
The only raid I've ever heard of happening in LA was at like Spearmint Rhino like 5 years ago.
And what are they looking for?
You're not supposed to touch the dancers, and so if you like let somebody touch you, that's like prostitution, or something like that.
So the dancers
even like a lap dance, like a no contact lap dance, or like, hands only.
Legally, like clients aren't supposed to touch you. I mean, that law is an honor.
You can touch them though.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Like, I mean, like it's like because you're touching somebody with clothes on and stuff, but like if they touch you, like it's prostitution for some reason.
So you can't take their hands and go woo like they do in the movies.
So basically, like what Stormy Daniels was doing was she was letting guys touch her while she was on stage and while she was dancing,
motorboating her and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was prostitution.
Oh my god!
So they arrested her for prostitution.
Talk about these Puritan laws and everything.
Well,
we have.
I know, and it's like if Donald Trump was behind it, what a hypocrite, because he literally paid her for sex.
Yeah.
And he never got arrested for solicitation.
And I guess I should say allegedly, but we obviously know. I mean, in today's society, I think our generation's more transparent. You don't just think that the Ohio police decided a sting raid and Stormy Daniels was in town and this was months after she was going to do a tell-all. You know what I mean? Like it's obvious what happened. But yeah, I'll have to double check and put that in the post show notes at the end, but I'm pretty sure, I guess I could just Google it, but I'm pretty sure they won out
I hope so.
All the charges were dropped and all that. So anyway, so you wait. So I'm sorry, I sidetracked there. So people, they show up wasted or whatever and you start making your money. What's the window where what do you do before people show up? Because in the movies, it's always like, all right, Cinnamon, your turn to go out there. And it's like one dude in the front and there's just like, you got to dance anyway. Like when are you on stage versus like making your rounds trying to get the private dances? Because it's the private dances where you make all the money?
When you're in a lineup, when you're on stage and that sort of thing, like they check you in once you come in, and then they like you're on the lineup, and that's where you usually stay in the rotation.
So it's just like comedy then, where you're like you don't want to go first. You're like, you want the sweet spot.
Well, I mean, if guys are at the stage and they're tipping, then you definitely want to go on. I mean, it's a good opportunity to get tipped and get money. But at the same time, like sometimes people will come in and they'll tip like $2 at the stage and that sort of thing, and you're just like, is it like I would rather just not take my clothes off and let them keep the $2. You know what I mean? Like it's like $2 isn't worth like getting dressed and undressed.
And does